Here is a comprehensive, epic narrative detailing the history, engineering, and mystery of the Ark of the Covenant. This version is expanded to delve deeply into the technical challenges, the historical context, and the enduring theories of its disappearance. The Golden Capacitor, the engineering of the deadliest object in history, Part 1. The Impossible Commission. The story begins in a landscape of absolute hostility, the Sinai Peninsula, a wilderness of granite peaks and scorching sand, where survival is the only daily objective. Here, at the foot of a trembling mountain, a group of escaped slaves received a set of instructions that defied their reality. For 400 years, the Israelites had been the engine of the Egyptian construction machine. They were mud brick makers. Their hands were skilled in mixing straw and clay, in hauling rough stones under the lash of a taskmaster. They were not jewelers. They were not metallurgists. They were not master carpenters. They possessed no workshops, no smelting furnaces, and no precision tools. Yet, the command given to Moses on the summit of Sinai was terrifying in its specificity. God demanded a chest, but not just any chest. It was to be an artifact of millimeter-perfect dimensions, constructed from materials that the desert did not offer, and overlaid with a quantity of gold that a refugee people should not have possessed. The margin for error was zero. This was not merely a piece of religious furniture. It was to be the footstool of the Creator of the universe. The instructions implied that if built incorrectly, it would simply be a box. But if built according to the pattern, it would become the most dangerous object on earth. Part 2. The Spirit of the Architect. The first crisis was personnel. Who among a nation of bricklayers could execute gold filigree? Who could carve cherubim out of solid bullion without snapping the wings? The answer marked a theological milestone. God called a man by name, Bezalel, from the tribe of Judah. The Bible describes him as the first human being to be filled with the Spirit of God. Interestingly, this first filling of the Holy Spirit was not for prophecy, nor for preaching, nor for performing miracles. It was for engineering. It was for craftsmanship. God endowed Bezalel and his assistant Oholiab with a supernatural download of technical skill. They were given understanding in how to cut gems, how to alloy metals, and how to carve timber. This suggests that the Ark was not just a human artifact. It was a collaborative project between human hands and divine intelligence. Part 3. The logistics of treasure. Before a single board could be cut, the logistics of the materials had to be solved. The requirements were staggering: over a meter of pure gold, rare woods, and fabrics dyed in colors reserved for emperors. Where did the gold come from? The answer lies in the chaos of the Exodus. On the night of the final plague, when death swept through Egypt, the Egyptians were seized with terror. In their desperation to get the Israelites to leave, they emptied their jewelry boxes. They handed over earrings, heavy necklaces, and bracelets. The Bible records that Israel plundered the Egyptians without drawing a sword. When Bezalel set up his makeshift workshop in the dunes, the people poured out so much gold that Moses eventually had to order them to stop giving. Then there was the wood. The desert is barren, but it is home to the acacia. This tree is a survivor. Its wood is incredibly dense, heavy, and rich in natural oils that make it resistant to water, rot, and insects. One slip of the hammer, one broken wing, and the entire massive slab would have to be melted down to start over. The cherubim faced each other, wings outstretched, their tips nearly touching. The physical design suggests that the Creator utilized the laws of physics to create a literal shock and/or device. To touch it unauthorized was to complete the circuit. Part 5. The Protocols of Death. Because of its lethal nature, the Ark came with a user manual written in blood. It was not a piece of furniture to be moved around a living room. It was a hazardous material. Only one family line within the tribe of Levi, the Kohathites, was authorized to transport it. But even they were forbidden to look at it or touch it. Before the camp moved, the high priest Aaron and his sons would enter the sanctuary to wrap the ark. They covered it first with the veil of the temple, then with a layer of waterproof badger skin, and finally with a cloth of solid blue. Only then could the Kohathites approach. They carried it using two long poles made of acacia overlaid with gold. These poles slid through gold rings on the feet of the ark. The command was strict. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. They shall not be taken from it. This ensured that no one ever had to get close enough to the ark to reinsert the poles. To lift it, 4 men would hoist the poles onto their shoulders, keeping the golden chest elevated and balanced. Part 6. The tragedy of Uzzah. The danger of the ark was not a myth. Centuries later, King David decided to bring the ark to his new capital, Jerusalem. In his excitement, David ignored the technical manual. Instead of using the Levites and the poles, he placed the ark on a new wooden cart pulled by oxen. It was a modern, practical solution, but it was a fatal error. As the procession reached the threshing floor of Nachon, the oxen stumbled on the uneven ground. The ark lurched. It began to tip. Walking beside the cart was a man named Uzzah. His reaction was instinctual. He was not a rebel. He was trying to help. He reached out his hand to steady the ark, to stop it from hitting the mud. The moment his fingers brushed the gold, he fell dead. The text is brutal in its brevity. God struck him there. David was terrified. He stopped the procession immediately. The lesson was clear. The ark was not a mascot. It was not a lucky charm. It was a concentration of holiness, so intense that it was incompatible with human error. Good intentions did not override divine protocol. Part 7. The weapon of mass destruction. When handled correctly, however, the ark was the ultimate weapon. It did not function by magic, but by presence. The conquest of Jericho remains the strangest military campaign in history. The Israelites did not build siege ramps. They did not use battering rams. They simply marched. For 6 days, the priests carried the ark around the city walls in total silence. On the 7th day, they circled 7 times and blew the shofars. The walls collapsed. But archaeological excavations at Jericho in the 1950s revealed a structural anomaly that aligns with the narrative. The walls did not fall inward as they would if pushed by invaders, nor did they simply crumble. They fell outward, creating a natural ramp for the Israelite army to run straight up and into the city. But the ark had a will of its own. Years later, when the corrupt sons of Eli the priest dragged the ark into battle against the Philistines as a good luck charm, without consulting God, the result was catastrophe. Israel was defeated. The ark was captured. The Philistines, triumphant, placed the ark in the temple of their god, Dagon, as a trophy. The next morning, the massive stone statue of Dagon was found face down before the ark. They set it up again. The next morning, Dagon was fallen again, but this time, his head and hands were severed, lying on the threshold. Then the plagues began. In every Philistine city where the ark was kept, tumors and panic broke out. The Philistines realized they were holding a radioactive object. They eventually put it on a cart pulled by 2 milk cows who had calves at home and slapped the animals to send them away. Against their natural instinct to return to their calves, the cows walked straight to Israel, lowing as they went. The ark had liberated itself. Part 8. The Day of Atonement. Once the Temple of Solomon was built, a structure engineered with massive stones to be a permanent house for this wandering chest. The ark was placed in the Holy of Holies. Here, it lived in total darkness. Only once a year, on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, was a human allowed to enter. The high priest prepared for days. He washed, he confessed. He dressed in simple white linen. He entered the room carrying a censer of burning coals and incense. This was a safety measure. The cloud of smoke shielded his eyes from the direct manifestation of the Shekinah glory that hovered between the cherubim. He sprinkled blood on the mercy seat 7 times to atone for the nation. Outside, Jerusalem held its breath. If the priest had a secret sin, or if the ritual was performed wrongly, he would die. Tradition, though debated, says a rope was tied to his ankle, so that if he collapsed in the presence of God, his body could be dragged out. For no rescue team dared enter that room. Part 9, The Great Disappearance. For centuries, the Ark was the gravitational center of Israel. And then it vanished. The year was 586 BC. The Babylonian Emperor Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem. His engines of war breached the walls. His soldiers burned the temple to the bedrock. They took everything. The Babylonians were meticulous bureaucrats. We have records of their loot. They listed the bronze pillars, the golden basins, the shovels, the snuffers. But in the inventory of items taken to Babylon, the Ark is not listed. In the Book of Chronicles, the last mention of the Ark is during the reign of Josiah, decades before the invasion. When the Babylonians kicked down the doors of the Holy of Holies, the room was likely already empty. Where did it go? This question has spawned 2,500 years of treasure hunting. Theory 1. The underground labyrinth. This is the prevailing theory among Orthodox Jews and many archaeologists. The Temple Mount is not a solid hill. It is a honeycomb of cisterns, tunnels, and chambers. The Talmud suggests that King Solomon, foreseeing the destruction of the temple, built a secret vault deep within the earth to hide the Ark. In 1981, Rabbi Yehuda Getz, the rabbi of the Western Wall, broke through a sealed gate in the tunnels. He claimed to have found the Cave of Souls and was minutes away from the chamber housing the Ark. However, religious friction exploded. The Muslim authorities, the Waqf, feared a Jewish takeover of the mount. They rushed in and sealed the tunnel with meters of concrete. The tunnel remains sealed to this day. The Ark, if it is there, sits just meters beneath the feet of millions of tourists. Theory 2. The Ethiopian Odyssey. The oldest and most romantic tradition belongs to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The Kebra Nagas Glory of the Kings claims that the Queen of Sheba visited Solomon and conceived a son, Menelik I. When Menelik grew up, he visited his father in Jerusalem and, upon leaving, smuggled the true Ark out of the temple, leaving a replica in its place. Today, in the city of Aksum, Ethiopia, stands the Church of Saint Mary of Zion. A single monk, known as the Guardian, is appointed for life to watch over a relic he claims is the Ark. He never leaves the chapel grounds. He speaks to no one. Historians are skeptical, but the ancient, continuous tradition is compelling. Theory 3. Jeremiah's Cave. The non-canonical book of 2 Maccabees records that the prophet Jeremiah, fleeing the Babylonian invasion, took the Ark and the altar of incense to Mount Nebo in modern Jordan. He found a cave, placed the holy items inside, and sealed the entrance. He prophesied that the location would remain unknown until God gathers his people again. Part 10. The Empty Room. When the Jews returned from exile and built the Second Temple, and later when Herod expanded it into a wonder of the world, the Holy of Holies was restored. The veil was hung, the walls were gold. But inside, the foundation stone was bare. For 600 years, the high priest of Israel entered the Holy of Holies on the Day of Atonement and sprinkled blood on nothing. The stone floor was empty, the visible presence of God was gone. They maintained the ritual, but the heart of the machine was missing. The enduring mystery, the Ark of the Covenant, remains the most famous missing object in human history. It is a paradox, an object made of earthly gold and wood that carried a lethal, heavenly charge. It toppled statues, leveled cities, and killed kings. If it were found today, what would happen? Would it be a mere archaeological curiosity, a dusty box from the Bronze Age? Or, if the lid were lifted after 2,600 years of darkness, would the capacitor still hold its charge? Would the presence that once dwelt between the cherubim still be waiting? The mystery is not just geographic, it is theological. The ark represented the terrifying nearness of God. Its disappearance marked the end of the age of visible wonders and the beginning of the age of faith, a time when humanity must seek the presence of God without a golden box to guide them, until, perhaps, the day the earth gives up its secrets and the gold shines in the light once more.